Hello, everyone, and welcome to our coffee. Today I'm here with Ryan Purvis. How are you, Ryan? How is
I'm
everything?
good. I'm good. And you? How are things?
I'm good, good, thank you. Enjoying the summer. Now we have some summer here in the Netherlands. Few days.
Oh, we're in the winter, but our winter days are like your summer days. So
Yeah, true. Yeah, here is summer with 17 degrees, but it's
oh,
summer.
sorry. We're actually okay. We're 8 degrees now, but we'll be 19 by 11. So
So
um,
your winter is my summer.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, we had a good winter. We had a good winter.
that's good. And Ryan, can you tell us a little about your background so that the people know about you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Ryan Purvis. I'm currently a CIO for a maritime business called Hilo. That's HILO. My background is largely three things. I've worked as a Microsoft partner, doing solution architecture and development. I've worked for vendors building product, and I've worked on the client side building solutions for end users. I also have a podcast called the Digital Workspace Works, where I really just talk about all the things that make work easier using tools. And I like to get involved in things where there's a problem to be solved, and using some sort of technology will help solve that problem.
Yeah, that's good and really important and useful those days.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and what do you think now in the moment that we are living now with the COVID? What do you think is have changed for your job? Because if you are doing products and this kind of thing, it might be a big change.
It's funny because when I moved to the UK from South Africa, um, I was already working in businesses that were distributed. So we might have had an office, but we worked from home predominantly anyway.
Oh,
And when I moved to the UK, it was a very different environment where I was commuting to an office 5 days a week.
oh,
And to me, it was insanity, wasting so much time on a train. And these are not nice commutes where you can sit down with a laptop and do work. You're standing rammed in with
oh,
everyone else. So there's very little you can do. So it's not productive time unless you're listening to something or reading something. So in some ways, I'm very grateful that we've had a pandemic that's made everyone realize that it's possible to work um, remotely or in different ways. Obviously, there are people that have passed away, and there's people that have had tough times. So I'm respectful of that. But a lot of this technology that we're using now is not new technology. I mean, we're using
true.
Skype. Skype's been around for 20 years. Teams and Zoom are just improvements on that. And I think it's been a good thing, for a business now that they can look anywhere for a resource or skills that they need, instead of being geographically constricted to say,
True.
well, I can only hire people that can get to London, for example, or I'm in Johannesburg now, I can only get to Joburg. Now you could pretty much use the time zones and say, as long as that person can work within 3 or 4 hours of the
Mhm.
main body of people, we can hire them, which opens up skill pools that weren't accessible before. You can pay different salaries, which work out probably in some cases more cost effective. So I'm very happy that this has happened. What I'm very worried about is that we're going to get driven back into the old ways, because that's a comfort factor for some people, or an agenda for some people, and I don't think that's actually good for the general populace.
Yeah, well, I hope some people accept the way and they can adapt for the different people. Some people need to go to the office, it's okay. But if we
Yeah,
want to work from home, I'm working from home many years also,
yeah,
and I love it. And I see it's different that you say some companies that before were telling me, no, if you live in my country, we can do something together. Now they
yeah,
don't mind. So it's,
yeah.
it's, it's good. In that way, it's really good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good things about it. I mean, I think there was a stat that I saw on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago where they said that dads have had time with their kids, and they don't want to go back to work because they're getting time with their kids.
Yeah,
Now, that's not to
true.
say that they're spending the entire day working, not working and playing with their kids, but there's now time to take the kids to school. There's time to pick them up from
Yes.
school. There's by the time 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock comes along, there's not an hour and a half commute, because my commute personally was an hour to an hour and a
Wow.
half each
It's a
way.
lot.
So by the time you get home, and you leave early in the morning as well, you're not seeing anybody. And then you're pretty much, eating dinner, maybe just falling down on the couch to watch a bit of TV and then going to bed. And then you repeat the cycle the next day. At least this way, I've just come back from a walk now. I'll work the whole day. I'll go for a walk again, which you could do if you're in the office. That's
Yes,
fine.
true.
But if my son needs me, I'm only 5 minutes drive away.
Yeah, that's
Because
true.
that's where his nursery is. So I think there's lots of pros, and I think there's very few cons.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And if your head is like too busy that is not working properly, you can stop half an hour and then work half an hour at night. Well, depending the job, of course, but
Well,
you can adapt your
well,
times when you are more effective most of the time.
yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I mean, we used to work long hours anyway. And after you commute and you got home and you might have half an hour worth of work. But you're right now, because you've had time with the family, sort of 5 to 7 is booked out of my diary for family time and
Me too.
bath and bed. Yeah, which I think we all do. But then if you want to sit for another hour or two working on something, you're not mentally exhausted. You kind
Mhm.
of you are tired, but you're on the right side of going down.
Yes.
So I think productivity is there. And I think there was a stat saying that there's a 13% or something that improvement on productivity for people working from home. And I'm not saying that you should work from home all the time. I think there is a case, and I mean I've worked for software vendors where your base is home and then you meet in the city, once a week.
Yeah.
Maybe twice a week, or when you're seeing customers, if it's a sales role, you meet with the people and that. So there is a need for interaction with people. So
Yeah,
I'm
of
not
course.
saying, work from home forever and that's it. I'm saying, you need to meet up when you need to meet up. And brainstorming and collaboration and all that stuff does work better in person.
True.
I'm unfortunately stuck into South Africa because I can't get back to the UK without some complicated route. So I'm missing the brainstorming sessions that are happening physically, but I'm doing them. So I'm joining them virtually, which you can see that it doesn't work as well. So I definitely think we need to have some level of face-to-face time. But I think that makes the travel a lot more focused, a lot more beneficial because you're not trying to squeeze in a brainstorming session with a whole bunch of back-to-back phone call meetings you were doing anyway. I mean, I used to think of them. I would go back to the madness. I used to go into my office in London. I used to sit on the phone the entire day with people in the same building as me,
Wow.
because on different floors. So and because it was so jammed, there wasn't enough time to basically walk up and down the stairs to have a meeting. People just sit on the calls all the time, and you're basically going from call to call to call to call. And I was like, well, why do I even come to the office? Because I'm not seeing anyone physically
True.
anyway. Yeah, I'm seeing them on the camera. So, but that's a dictation that you have to be in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah, but in those cases, it's not worth it because you can do it from home and you don't lose time.
Well,
Well,
you
there are
think
some
about
companies.
there are companies that still want to do that. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of the banks want you. Look, I can understand certain roles, like if you're a trader,
Yeah.
I can understand them wanting you to be in the office because typically that office will have a really high speed connection, 10 gigabits or something like that, which you won't get at home. Also, you're going to have proper setups. I mean, look, you can have a proper setup at home, but the cost of doing that becomes exponential.
Yes. True.
But for the average knowledge worker, the average person doing Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, sending email, could be at a coffee shop.
Yes. It's true. And for the companies that they want to start to doing their business digital, so they want to start working from home, but they don't know how to do it. Where do you tell them? Where would you tell them to start? What are the first steps to take?
Well, I think for the first time in a long time, if you look at what's available to any business, there's so many online tools. I mean, as long as you've got a browser, it's not even about the device anymore. Whether you're
Yes,
running a
true.
Mac or whether you're running, Windows 10 device, you got too many choices in some senses. But I think you need to have a basic understanding of what your needs are. But typically, most businesses would be able to get away with Google Apps or Google Workplace, I think it's called now, and Office 365, which gives you your word processing, your Excel, your spreadsheets, your presentation tools like Keynote or I don't know what the Google one is, but PowerPoint. And then it's about understanding your users. What sort of personas do you have? As I say, most people are standard knowledge workers as much as they think they're unique. But if you've got developers, for example, they need to have the right hardware to develop on. Most of that stuff is going to be pushed into the cloud anyway. So you're going to be using GitHub or Git or Microsoft's tools or Jenkins or whatever it is. So the starting point is to understand your users, give them the right tools, give them the right products that they need application-wise. Do a cloud first or mobile first approach with your end user in mind, and then assess it, on a regular basis, quarterly, half yearly. Make sure it's working. I've been fortunate that I've been exposed to tools that do monitoring of experience. So how good is your CPU? How good is your memory? How's it been utilized? And that helps you to pick the right tools. So maybe you spend a bit extra on the hardware up front, because over time, it gives a better experience to the user. Often, and I had this conversation yesterday with someone saying, "Oh, we'll just buy them a cheap laptop, 300 £300." And I said to them, "But you're going to buy them a cheap laptop. They're going to start working on a big spreadsheet with 60,000 rows in it, 200,000 rows in it. That machine's not going to cope. Now that's going to take them 20 minutes to do a 5-minute activity. They're going to get demotivated, and you're going to say, oh, this person's useless." And they're not. They got the wrong tools.
Yes, the tools are really important. And it's what you say, not only that they will feel frustrated, is that for you as a business owner, it's more expensive.
Yes.
Because they need more time to work, so then you have to pay more.
Exactly. And the product that I used to use has like a health score, and one of those health scores is working out the resource that's not available at the time. So if you double click on opening Outlook, and I've just done this with my father-in-law. He's bought a new laptop finally. It took his Outlook 5 minutes to boot up. He had to send an email on Saturday, and it took him 25 minutes to send the email, because Outlook just took so long to boot up. And it was because of bad sort of behaviors. He had really big PST files, sort of 10 gigs, 20 gig PST files. So I know this all sounds very technical, but the point is that there were some basic things that he because he doesn't know any better, he was just doing that was slowing down his overall experience. So we bought him his machine was really old, so we bought him a new machine. But a lot of it was just saying to him, you need to actually stop storing all your email. You only need to store the email that you really need. A lot of the stuff is just noise. And when I say noise, it's newsletters, it's it's reply alls to emails backwards and forwards, where there's no actual content in there. So we set up some stuff where we take the attachments out, we store them in a folder in OneDrive. We reduce the size of his PST files. So now he's a lot more optimized thing, and now he's learned a bit about it. So his experience now is managed. He now understands his role in his experience, and he's a lot happier. But also his Outlook doesn't take 5-10 minutes to load. It loads in about 3 or 4 seconds, let's say 20 seconds, which is a lot more palatable. And it's a good experience for him.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and there is any tool that you think that everyone should use? Something is everyone using? That is the more common?
It depends on what you want to do, I guess. So I've just moved over to Mac. I think that's a far superior experience to the Windows environment. In doing that, there's a few apps on that platform and on the Apple ecosystem that I use and I swear by. One would be Drafts. And the reason why I like Drafts is, regardless of which device you're on, be it a tablet or an iPhone or your Mac, is it opens straight onto a page. So if you want to capture something quickly, that time to capture is so short that you don't lose the idea, which is often the problem I had with things like Evernote or OneNote, etc. But the other tool that I swear by is Notion. Notion. And that's like that's like a task management. Well, it's a very flexible tool. You can do lots with it. You can basically you create pages, and on those pages you can have tables and properties and that. So I use that for task management. I use it to manage my podcast. I use it to manage work at Hilo. So whenever we have something we need to do, we're not going to go buy a brand new tool to do it. We can use Notion as a nice interim step to test out the theory. So we're doing, for example, IT requests right now through Notion. We're doing our product roadmap through Notion. We do our meeting notes through Notion. We do our task management through Notion, and they're all connected together. So whenever we have a new component that needs to be built, that's usually come from an IT request from the business. Because what was happening is people were sending us emails and said, "Oh, I'd really like to have this thing," and then you get, the email gets lost somewhere,
True.
or you reply to the email, then you end up with a plethora of emails for one thing. So now they have to create a request. The request gets worked on. We go through a process that we've documented in a product called Whimsical. We've got a flow chart. We explain how it goes from Notion into our development tools. And what's nice about that is when we do the meetings, all the meeting notes are captured in Notion as well. So as we go from an IT request into a roadmap item, we don't lose any of our knowledge as long as someone's taken the time to write the notes down. So I really swear by Notion in that sense. And then I think it's just a personal preference around what your daily job is. I use the Office products. I think they are good products. I've never really used the Google products. Oh, there's one other tool that I think is really good. It's a recent tool that I've added to my bow, and that is Textexpander. So
which one?
Textexpander. Textexpander. So what's nice about Textexpander is we all have text that we use a lot, that we write a lot. So if someone asks you for your LinkedIn profile, someone asks you for your email address, someone asks you for your phone number, you can go even more sophisticated. Like when someone sends me a LinkedIn request, and usually they're trying to sell me something, I have a pre-written response to them, which is, "I'm not really looking for that right now. Thanks for contacting me, but here's my podcast. Please have a listen." Or, "Thanks for connecting. Here's my podcast. Please have a listen." So those are all pre-written things. And then with Textexpander, with a special character, like I use an exclamation mark, I can say !li, and that'll give me my LinkedIn URL. So I don't have to go and find it, type it, etc. So that saved me a lot of time. So when I bring someone onto my podcast, that whole process is all Textexpander snippets. So all the paragraphs, you've been a guest, so that's all pre-written. So all I have to do is say exclamation mark podcast body, and then it'll ask me who the guest is. I put their name in, and the rest of it's generated.
Wow, that's good. That's a good one. I will check it.
And it saves you time. So for the 100, let's say it was $100 or $80 or whatever I paid for the year, I've saved that in the first week of using it, because your time, repeating things, and I use it at work as well when we have a new customer that wants to do something like use our APIs. That's pre-written. So I just put exclamation mark API, and all the text comes out there. So I don't have to rewrite it every time and go, I wrote this last time, where is that? So Textexpander really saves me time. As you can kind of get, there's a thread with all my stuff. It's all about productivity and saving me time. The other thing that I use on a Mac is Hazel. So that's like folder and file management. So when we do a podcast, for example, and I've got a recording comes out of Teams, that goes to OneDrive. That's automatically moved into Dropbox and classified. So it gets the guest name, the date and time of the meeting, and then the recording file sits there. What I've added to that now is using a product that's on the cloud called Zapier, is automatically create the entries in Notion for that meeting as well. So everything is all tied together, and it's saving. The whole point is to save time. It takes you a little bit of time to set it up. And a little bit of a headache to set it up, to be honest, because it's kind of out there. You got to figure it out. But once it's operating, and Heather, my producer, and she still does a lot of stuff manually. Even she's noticing that we have a meeting, the stuff happens, and she's like, "Geez, you're so quick." And I'm like, "No, it's all automated. I'm not doing that." That's because one of my biggest problems was we'd have the call. I go from our podcast recording or with a guest, then I'd go straight into other meetings or work, and I'd forget to move the files across, and then she would be like going, where's the file? So now you've wasted not only my time, but I've wasted her time, and that's the benefit of these tools. So for me, I look at productivity tools quite a lot, and I'm trying to find ways to reduce my manual steps.
Yeah, that's really good. I will check all of those because
good. Any help you need, let me know.
Thank you, because this happened to me too. That sometimes it's repetitive. You have to do the same over and over. And if you can do it automatically, it's perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so my dream is that when I get a guest who wants to come on and I put their name into a thing and I put their LinkedIn link, that all of that just gets automated. All the collection of information that we do, all the research that we do, I want that all to be automated. But that's going to take me a bit of time.
Yes.
So I'm just so you got to start with the small things first. So back to your original question, what do you recommend? Do a small thing first. Do a small change, incremental improvement all the time, and that'll give you your value quicker than trying to do big things.
And you think these tools are easy to use for people that is not used to technology?
They are. So drafts is straightforward. I mean, I use about 10%, not even 10%, 5% of the functionality of drafts. It's a really powerful platform. I mean, you can do a lot of the stuff I mentioned now, you can do in drafts. And drafts has a connection to Textexpander as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I haven't even explored yet. But, your pick up and use is so easy that once you start using it, you won't stop using it. And most of the functionality is free. I mean, I pay the subscription because I wanted to use one piece of functionality called Workspaces, but it's one of those you can have my money every year. It really just does what it's adds value in my life. Textexpander, same thing. Within a couple of minutes you'll be like, oh, how did I ever work without this? And in fact, I did that. I used it for about a year, and I thought, I'm not really getting the value out of it. So I turned it off, and then all of a sudden I realized how much I actually used it. So it's a good tool. Notion, it's a bit of a learning curve to begin with, probably because it takes some time to just get your head around how would I use this and why would I use this. But once you got that done, and there's a very good guy that I follow on YouTube named August Bradley. He's got a whole productivity framework. It's about 30 videos on how he sets up Notion, and I use his templates to begin with. So for task management and life planning and goals and that stuff, and that really got me going. But now that I use it every day, it's got all my important stuff in it, and it's become integral to my workflow, which then you've got a good tool. So I think anyone can pick these things up. Give yourself 10, 20 minutes, half an hour, and you should be up and running.
Good, because I always look for easy tools to use. But sometimes I think they are easy, and some people see them complicated. So that's what I ask.
Yeah, well, I think it's also where you are when you look at these tools. Sometimes you've had a rough day, and now you're looking at a tool, and you're like, oh, I haven't got the headspace for this. It just looks too complicated. And then you go and have a sleep on it. The next morning you wake up, you're like, well, what was I worried about? This is actually so easy. But it's got to start with something small. So any tool you pick up, do something small with it. Like I say, drafts, I haven't even used 90% of the functionality because I haven't needed it, and I'm probably missing some obvious cool stuff. But so be it.
Yeah, with time you can learn the more difficult ones. And do you think the companies make resistance to use this kind of tools?
Yes. So depending on your business, the typical enterprise financial services or something like that will restrict you on everything. All risk mitigation. If you look at something like Jira, which is a very good open source tool for development management and various other service request stuff, most times if you look at what you get in a bank, you can't use half the stuff or 80% of what's available to you because it's all been turned off. And if you want to put a workflow in, you have to go and raise a request and someone else has to come develop it for you, and all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, those tools become more hindrance than valuable. And what I'm seeing with some of the tools in the market now, like Power Automate from Microsoft, which is like a Zapier, is enabling end users to do their own thing within a bigger sandbox. So you can go and build a workflow, but it's not going to go and bring down the entire bank because it's all hosted on Azure, and you got a bit more flexibility and a bit more freedom. So I think what I'm seeing finally happen is almost a blending between the personal device and the enterprise device, where you now are less restricted to an extent, and I still think there are going to be restrictions depending on the business you're in, but to try and enable the users to have a better experience overall. So if you can do, and people were building their productivity tools themselves anyway in the bank. If you're a developer, you would build your own tools all the time, but there would be a governance thing trying to find those tools to stop you to log them or stop you or whatever the requirement was. So I'm hoping what will happen in the next evolution, which or next iteration is that you as a user can use the tools you need to use to get your job done without the constraints that exist that basically stop you working. So that's why I think people have moved to Mac away from Windows, is by being on a Mac in the enterprise, there isn't all the governance that's on a Windows device, so you can get away with a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
more. Yeah, it's things now it's a bit more difficult because it's difficult, but you've got tools that work on both Windows and Mac that could do that restriction, but they're not going to go and restrict you on drafts, for example, because
Oh,
drafts
yeah.
only exist on Mac. But if it was like OneDrive, where they want you to not be able to copy files out of OneDrive into another thing, that's a policy that can be pushed down to both Mac and to Windows. So I think it's a balancing act. It's always going to be a balancing act.
Oh, that's good. So we are going in the right way. It looks like we are going in the right way.
I think so. I think, as I say, I think the pandemic has opened a lot of eyes, and it's forced a lot of people that were not technology savvy. And I'm not saying they have to be technology experts, but it's raised the level up. Everyone, it's like a tide raises all boats. People now know, like even my in-laws and my folks use Zoom. They know what Zoom is.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, and I'd say to them, "Oh, I use Teams or use Zoom." They'd look at me like, "Huh, what?" But now my mom sits on a course. She's doing a course at the moment. She's on an 8-week course every Saturday, and she's using Zoom. She doesn't like Zoom, and she says she's scared of it, but she's using it. So when she said it's so silly because she uses FaceTime with me, she uses WhatsApp with me, but Zoom was new, so all of a sudden it was
Yeah.
it's old change. But I think because everyone's at the same level, even kids today are at the same level. I think that's just going to make life easier overall for anyone going into the workforce.
Yeah, that's great. And if we want to close up the call with the most important things for the people to
Yeah.
get from what we have talked, what would you say?
So I think be curious. So if you want to look into something, go look at it. Spend the time. I think I mentioned something earlier about doing incremental small things first. Try always do small changes and see how they go. I think that'll help. And there's a lot of tools out there, so don't get too overwhelmed by them. But give them all give them a try until you find the one that fits you personally, and then get good with it.
Okay, that was really
Okay,
nice. That was really nice, Raya. Thank you for joining us,
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
and have a nice week.
You too. Thanks, Gemma.
Bye.
Bye.